Hey friends, it's Robin. Welcome to my channel. Today we're doing another recent reads. I fell behind again. If you watched my last two recent reads, those were filmed in like early August, and then I didn't edit. I didn't read for like the majority of the rest of the month, but I finally have enough books to do another round of these. And this one I think is going to be relatively quick. Some of these were rereads. I'm going to talk about them as a group, things like that. So if you haven't seen one of these before, I do these every 10 or so books. That might be changing a little bit in the new year. I'm considering how many books I want to put on each of these because these videos have been short enough that I think I could up it to 15, but we'll see. I have 10 more books to talk about, so let's kick it off with Brother Song by DJ Clune, which was the fourth and final book in the Green Creek series, and I am so sad to see the series end. I read Wolf Song quite a while ago, and then it got picked up by Tor, and because of that, the audiobooks got taken down, and so I ended up putting the series on hold, and then I binged through the last three books kind of back to back, and this fourth book was so good. I think book three is still my favorite, but Brother Song was a close second. This one is following Carter, who is the last brother in the Bennett Pact, and he is getting his fated mate romance. We learned who Carter's mate was. I think we as a reader knew back in book two, but in book three is when Carter learned who his mate was. And this is kind of the aftermath of the ending of book three. So at the end of book three, something happens and we learn that Carter makes a choice. He makes a choice. I don't want to spoil anything, but he makes a choice. And this is him kind of dealing with the consequences of that choice and then finding his way back to himself and his family. And along the way, learning about love. Up until this point, Carter has always seen himself as straight. And so when he ends up being mated to a male wolf, it kind of turns his life on his head. And it is him coming to terms with that, as well as dealing with the situation that him and his mate are in. Again, I'm being really vague because I don't want to spoil anything, but I just thought that this was such a sweet romance. Carter and Gavin are both so precious, and just watching Gavin like re-experience the world was just so good. There were so many really funny moments in this one because Gavin spends a large portion of his life as a wolf, and when that happens, you start losing your connection to your humanity, and there are so many like wolf-like qualities that he has, and him and Carter butt heads over it, and there are so many like little back and forths where like Gavin will be complaining about how much Carter talks and Carter will be yelling at him for like eating with his hands, and it was just so cute. However, I did sob at the end. I was not mentally prepared for the way that this series concluded, and it hurt a lot. It destroyed me. It does have a happy ending, don't get me wrong, but the lead up to that happy ending is an emotional journey that I was not ready for. It's just so fantastic, and now I desperately need to own all of the books with the new covers. The next three books I'm actually going to group all together because they are part of a series. They are a reread of A Fate in Wrath and Flame, which is book one in the, I think it's the Fate and Flame series. I gave this 5 stars. This was my third time reading this book, and I just freaking love this series so much. I feel like this one is so underrated in the fantasy romance world. I feel like everyone loves the JLA books and everything like that, but the series is so fantastic. It does have like a vampire-esque feel to it. It's a portal fantasy. Our heroine is thrust into this magical world, into the body of a princess who just murdered the royal family and has no memory of it because she's a totally different person, and no one believes her, and she's trying to figure out how to survive and like maybe do the bidding of a meddling god because she doesn't know what else to do or how to get out of this situation. And along the way, she's learning about these fantasy beings, these fae beings, and maybe having a romance, an enemies to lovers romance. This book was just as good the third time around. I loved it. And then I also read the sequel A Curse in Blood and Stone for the second time. I gave this one 5 stars too. And again, I loved this one just as much the second time around. The ending of this book has such a good like reveal moment, and it gets me every single time. And then I read book 3, A Queen of Thieves and Chaos. I did get an arc of this, and then they did send me this really chunky, beautiful book, and I gave this one 5 stars as well. This is just, I don't know what it is about this series, but literally everything about it works for me. It just has all of my like fantasy romance buzzwords in it, and I'm not the biggest fantasy reader. I need my fantasy to be pretty romance forward, but this not only has a really prevalent romance, but the characters in here are so well developed, and it is extremely character driven, and I think it lends itself so well to my personal reading taste. At this point in the series, we have a whole lot of POVs, and I really appreciate how Kay Tucker has kind of set up this whole world and series, because in the first book we pretty much only get like one POV. I think there's like 2, maybe 3 chapters from a different POV, and it's like the first chapter and then like the last chapter, and the rest is from our heroine, like our main heroine's point of view. And so you aren't like trying to keep characters straight or anything like that, and you are learning about the world as at the same time as our heroine, because she knows nothing about this world. And so it never feels very info dumpy, because you're getting it like little bits at a time as she is learning about this world. And then as the series goes on and we get more and more characters and we start to like be able to keep them all straight, then you get more and more POVs. And I just think it is such a smart way to set up this story so that at no point it feels overwhelming, especially as like for a romance reading audience. And so I just think it was a really smart choice. And in this one, we get a whole bunch of other POVs. I love all of the characters, the side characters. Jarek is a pretty main character in this one, and he might be one of my new favorite characters of all time, like side characters. I just frickin' love him. I am kind of obsessed with this. It has warring kingdoms. Like I said, there's vampire-esque beings, meddling gods, there's a dragon. I love this series so much. I love it a lot. So I gave all 3 of those 5 stars. Unfortunately, that is the end of the 5 stars. Everything else has been 3 stars. I am in a 3-star reading slump right now, where I'm picking up books and they're fine. I'm feeling fine about everything, which includes This Spell's Disaster by Torianne Martin, which I am so sad about because I thought that this was going to be like an all-time favorite sapphic witchy romance. I've been all about the witchy rom-coms pretty much ever since, what, the X-Hex maybe? And I was so excited to get a queer take on it, a sapphic take on it, and I gave it 3 stars. This had a fake dating element in it, which I really liked, and my favorite part of this was that pretty much the entire book takes place at this witchy festival in the woods, and I loved the setting. The setting was so cool. However, the romance itself and like the main plot just didn't do anything for me. I had vlogged my original reaction to the end of this, and I ended up scrapping the vlog for a bunch of reasons. I will talk about it in my like monthly reset at the end, but one of the things that just didn't really work for me is that the main setup premise of this is that one of our heroines, Morgan, is a potion maker, and she accidentally gives a love potion to Rory, who she is fake dating. And that isn't really what happens. Morgan works at her family's shop where they like imbue self-care items and like shower things with magic. And so you can get shampoo that like helps relax you and all of these other things. And that is kind of like her special skill, as she's really good at like potion making. She is supposed to be making Rory like a relaxing potion, however you want to word that, because Rory is really stressed out about going to this festival and being around her family, because she is a somewhat famous witch because she won this like magic competition thing a couple of years ago, and then she left that competitive world. And so she's really anxious about being back in this place. And so Morgan makes her a potion. And then they're at the festival, and all of a sudden Morgan decides that she messed up the potion and that she must have given Rory a love potion somehow accidentally. And not only that, but it's like the world's strongest love potion because love potions have historically like a very short window of working. And she is completely convinced that Rory has this like weeks long acting love potion that she made accidentally with no evidence at all. And so I was just like, where's the logic in this? Like, why? And she keeps doing all of these really dumb things. And instead of just being like, hey, I think I might have given you a love potion, she just keeps doing dumb things to like push Rory away. And then at the end, it all ends up being a moot point anyways. And it's just, I didn't like that. And then this the whole book takes place like over like a long weekend while they're at the festival, which I liked, but it made the romance feel so insta-lovey because at the end they're like, I love you. And I was like, but you were together for like 3 days. So I don't know. It wasn't my favorite. Which I'm just going to talk about this one right away too. A Shot in the Dark by Victoria Lee. I did give this book 4 stars, but that is a good lead in to this book because I didn't love the romance in this one. However, I loved the rest of this book. This book deals really heavily with addiction. Our heroine is an ex-Orthodox Jew who ended up leaving the community after becoming addicted to drugs, and a very, very traumatic event kind of separates her from that community. And she goes out to California, and while she is there, she hits rock bottom and she goes into rehab and ends up becoming an artist. She does photography. And now that she is clean, I think she's been clean for like 4 years, she's coming back to New York for the first time, and she is entering this program to work with her idol, who is this like world famous photographer. And her first night back in New York, she ends up going out to this queer club with her new roommates, and she meets this guy who is trans, and the two of them have the most intense night together. And I loved their relationship up until that point. Their chemistry at the beginning, so good, and that first steamy scene was fantastic. But it turns out that the hero is her photography idol, and their relationship ends up kind of becoming this like forbidden thing. And I didn't love that part. I felt like there were really obvious ways to fix this power imbalance by just, I don't know, saying a couple of things to certain people and like it would have all been fine. And instead they just both kept building it up and like making the other one upset over it. And I was like, there were really easy solutions to this problem, and you guys did none of them. And so I didn't love that aspect, but the rest of the book was so good. The look at her relationship with her culture and religion was freaking fantastic. I loved how she had such a complex relationship with her culture and religion and history. I loved the discussions around addiction. This does deal really heavily with addiction. You do see relapse and like vivid depictions of use on page, so do know that going in. And I think that the queer aspects of this book were just done so well, and they were discussed so well. And Victoria Lee made so many fantastic, smart decisions throughout this whole thing on how they depicted certain scenes. And I loved all of that. But the romance itself just, it didn't do anything for me. I thought the grovel at the end left a lot to be desired. And so I had such a hard time rating this one because on one hand, I loved so much about this, but I thought the romance just, it wasn't up to what I had wanted. And so I think if you go into this one with the mindset of it being a contemporary story and let the romance just kind of be an afterthought, this will be far more powerful than if you go into this expecting the romance part to be forefront. That's my personal take on it. You might not agree, but I did still really like it. It wasn't quite what I was expecting. Then we have the Labor Day Chronicles by Lee Ko, which is book 7 in the Hollow Knight series. And this was a 3-star. This is, I think, my least favorite in the series. Apparently, this is very similar to the Christmas one, which I haven't read yet. I'm hoping to read it this coming holiday time, but this is set during Labor Day, obviously, which I still think is absolutely hilarious that we have a Labor Day romance. Cracks me up. But essentially, we're following these two main characters who have to work on Labor Day, but our heroine is working under this reporter who is kind of famous for uncovering and solving these cases that the local police can't solve. And the two of them are trying to figure out this string of robberies where somebody is stealing wealthy people's shoes. And no one can figure out who it is or how all the victims are connected or how to stop it. And the two of them end up solving this mystery. And I think what fell flat for me with this one is one of my favorite things about this series is how each of the books has its own unique kink in it. And this one was built up as a degradation kink, not only by the author, but in the book itself, where the hero really built up the fact that he was into degradation. And it was so underwhelming. It was just, it was not utilized to the point that I was hoping for, like, at all. Like, he called her a couple of names every now and then, but it was like this same one a couple of times, and then no, that was it. And I was like, I want, if you are going to pitch this to me, not only from the author, but like in the book, if you are going to build up the fact that this is going to be a degradation kink, I need you to deliver on it and not half-ass it. And this book half-assed it. So I think there's a Thanksgiving one coming, I think. Hopefully that one is like Hallows Grove or Liberty Falls, because those are my favorite. Then I read Witch of Wild Things. This I gave 3 stars. I picked this up kind of on a whim because it became available through Penguin Random House Audio, and the cover pulled me in and the whole witchy aspect pulled me in. And on one hand, it had a really great witchy setup, and I did like the witchy aspects to it, but I found all of the characters to be super obnoxious, in all honesty. We're following this heroine whose family was supposedly cursed by the old gods, and ever since then, they all have a hint of magic, and she has the ability to speak to plants. She has a sister that can kind of control the weather. She can't do it consciously, but the weather reacts to her emotions. And then they lost their sister when they were younger, and that sister had the ability to control animals or like calm down animals. And our main character has to return to her small town and live with her sister, who she does not get along with, after losing her job. And on top of that, she is being haunted by their late sister's ghost. And it is her trying to repair her relationship with her sister while working at this nursery, but she has a special job where she is going out and searching the local area for special plants to sell, and she is teamed up with this guy that she had a huge crush on in high school that she would also talk to on AOL AIM. You know, something happened when they were in high school and he broke her heart. And she knows that it is him, but she never revealed her identity to him back in high school over AIM, and so he has no idea who she is. And the two of them are working together and slowly kind of forming this romance, and I thought it was fine. Like, this entire book is already, like, the details are already leaving my brain because not a lot of it sticks out to me. I found the sister to be utterly unbearable, and she does have a whole redemption thing, and I could not forgive her for the stuff that she said and did, like, at all. And like, as much as I understand where she was coming from, it was too far for me to like forgive as easily as our heroine forgave. And like, I know it's family or whatever, but like, on top of that, there's an ex in here who is insanely sexist and misogynistic, and I didn't even, he's not even on page for very long. It was probably maybe the first 10%, and I hated him so much that it still inhibited my enjoyment of this book. There is a twist at the end that I didn't like. I kind of saw it coming pretty early on, and I still didn't like it. I just thought it was underwhelming. This was fine. It was so aggressively average. And then to continue on with that same streak, The Secret Lives of Country Gentlemen by K.J. Charles. Look, I broke my own rules with this book, and I bought it before reading it from Barnes& Noble, and then I DNF'd it at 9%, and this is why I don't do that. My husband always makes fun of me because we'll go to Barnes& Noble and he'll be like, what books are you getting? I'll be like, books that I've already read. And so when I bought this one, he's like, oh, look at you buying a book the way that you're supposed to and not having read it. And then I frickin' DNF'd it. And this is why. This is why I don't do this. I just didn't care. I just didn't care. I got the audiobook of this from my library because I had seen such good reviews for this, and I'm not a big historical reader, but if you give me queer historical with kind of like a different take on historical, I'm going to attempt to pick it up. And that's what I thought this was going to be. One of our main characters suddenly inherits an earldom, I believe, some sort of like nobility title, and it's kind of unexpected. Like, he was never supposed to inherit this title, and through a series of events ends up inheriting this title, and he has a romance with a smuggler. I loved that setup, but this book, I got like 9% in, and I just could not care less. Like, I kept pausing the audiobook because I was literally sick of listening to it and just leaving my headphones in and sitting there in silence. And that's never a good sign. If I would prefer silence to a book, that's not good. So I'm going to continue on with this, and I'm not reading the sequel either. So there's that. Ending on Headstrong by Eden Finley. I gave 3.5 stars. Also fine. Totally fine. This is part of the Vinos and Veritas, is that what it's called, series. They're all part of like a world that Serena Bowen is set up, and then each of the books is a standalone set in that same world written by a bunch of different authors. And this one I ended up reading because it is tied into the Satanverse, and this one features very, very minimally two characters from the CU hockey series, and I believe this one ties in to the Football Royalty series, if I'm remembering correctly. We are following this ex-hockey player who was like destined for the NHL, and he had signed a contract, and he ends up tearing his ACL, and his career is over, and he is completely mourning the loss of this career, and because of that has not been able to move on. He's cut himself off from his friends, from family, from hockey, and he is working this dead-end job that he enjoys but is obviously not going anywhere with, as a bartender at Vino and Veritas, which is a like queer, I don't want to say a queer bar, but it's like a very inclusive bar. And he ends up meeting this guy who is a current hockey player at the local university where this hero had gone, and the two of them end up having a very opposites attract grumpy sunshine romance. And our hockey player, like our current hockey player main character, is openly gay. He is one of the first like openly gay players, I think, like ever in this university's history. And then the other main character has always seen himself as straight. And the two of them end up having this really slow burn friends to lovers romance. I say slow burn. Slow burn for Eden Finley, I guess. It's not all that slow burn, but they have a friends to lovers romance, and I thought it was cute. That's it. I literally have nothing else to say about it. I did really like that right at the very end, we get a peek at two of my favorite characters from the CU hockey series. The whole time that like plot was being discussed, or like it's a job that he is offered, like pretty early on in the book, it immediately made me question if it was those two characters from CU, and it was. And I thought that part was really cute, and I liked their romance, and I thought it was fine. I thought it was totally fine. It was something that I read, and that is pretty much summing up how I currently feel about literally everything that I'm reading right now is that it is something that I read and I need it to turn around because I miss loving books. I have had what, one, two, three, four, five, six books in a row that I've just felt so fine and or did not like. And I just needed to stop. I do have my TBRs planned for the next couple of weeks because I have completely mapped out my content through the end of the year, and I am trying really hard to actually get ahead on videos and not be like frantically trying to complete video ideas. So hopefully that works out better for me. Let me know how your reading has been going, if you have read any of these, if you felt the same or not about them, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye.